listen.
I think the more interesting question, and I'm not saying it's not an interesting question, like where the ideological roots of this come from. I just think, and this is my big push, I think a much more interesting question is not where did it come from. My question is, why did every major corporation, every political class, Hollywood, why did every powerful... Because we didn't
Bud Light them.
Well, hold on.
We didn't Bud Light them.
That's not the point. That's a totally different question. That's a question of why didn't we stop it? I'm saying, why did every powerful person in the United States of America embrace it at the same time and start jamming it down our throats?
There's an answer. Social media.
I don't think that's the answer.
You look at LexisNexis data. In every country on the planet with the rise of social media, these terms began to take hold. Now, there's a root to why these ideas in particular, but these weren't the only ideas getting spread. I've done this rant a million times, so I'll keep it quick. But when Facebook first switched to an algorithmic model, the number one form of content was police brutality videos. Several websites emerged that just started publishing nothing but
Cop Block and Free Thought Project.
And these were some of the most trafficked websites in the world, because Facebook said, whatever people share, we show more of. And it was rudimentary. YouTube, you know what the number one content was on YouTube in the early days? As long as the thumbnail was a woman in a bikini, I'm not joking, it would get more views, because YouTube said, if it gets clicks, show it to more people, it'll get more clicks. People said, okay, whatever my video is, make the thumbnail a bikini woman and it'll get clicked on, and then YouTube promotes me.
Right.
They started to refine their algorithms. Some ideas got deleted. There was around this time a rise in white nationalist content alongside intersectional content, and advertisers went, we can't be next to white nationalists. We're taking our ads. They said, okay, they said, we'll get rid of that content. No advertiser cared about justice and responsibility and caring about our neighbors. So around 2008 was when we saw the emergence of Facebook, Twitter, and all these other platforms and the rise of the algorithms. LexisNexis data shows us the emergence of words like white privilege, racism, etc., colonizer, appeared in every newspaper in every Western country around the exact same time in a massive hockey stick.
Yes. Okay, so let me give you a counter to the fact that it's just social media and algorithms, okay? So it's really around 2012 when those Nexus charts shoot up. And it's not just what was going on YouTube or other social media, but we're talking about the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, major newspapers. And
you know why?
Well,
for the New York Times to get shares on Facebook, they needed these search terms.
Listen.
Vice famously had an article that said something like, trans women of color, victims of police brutality, exemplifies the Black Lives Matter movement. And it crammed as many of these words as possible into a single headline, and everyone laughed.
Listen, this is why I don't agree with this, okay? So I do not believe that the goal here was clicks and views and likes. And think about it like this. Who was the number one show in cable news before he got fired? Tucker Carlson. And there are all of these stories that he would touch that nobody else would touch that would get, listen, just imagine this, right? You're a cable news show. Let's say you were going to do a show all about what really happened with Jeffrey Epstein and who's really covering it up. Let's say you were going to do a show about who's been vaccine injured from the COVID vaccine. You would get enormous views.
Amy Roback on ABC News wanted to do the story. It was shut
Yes,
down.
I know, right. But I'm saying, so there are stories that would get an enormous amount of clicks, an enormous amount of views, but they're shut down because they go against the powerful. So my point is just that the reason why the New York Times and the Washington Post and these major publications started pushing this stuff, I do not believe was because it was getting more views. I think this was an intentional distraction campaign that was following Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party movement, and the fact that Barack Obama was up for re-election and had continued the George W. Bush policies for his entire administration. And they had to make something that would go like, look, people are very upset with this failure. This is what we have to throw at them.
It's too reductive.
I don't think so.
So when I worked for Fusion, when they said, we are going to be nice. So when they pitched me, this is ABC News Univision. They said, we want to be nice Vice. Will you come and work with us? I said, what will you give me? He said, we're going to give you a ridiculous amount of money and a massive budget. What's your goal? And they said, everything you already do it here. We don't like that Vice does the weird sex, drug stuff, but we like the rock and roll. So you bring that edgy, on the street journalism to us, and we're good. 6 to 8 months later, they were full woke. They brought in a new editor-in-chief, and he changed his Twitter profile photograph to a picture of a black fist that said "Down with whiteness."
If someone tells you they like rock and roll,
and the reason why they did it explicitly in the meetings I was at with the executives of this company was, young people are progressive, and if we don't adhere to what they want, we will get erased. In order to succeed as a media company, you target the young people and you age with them. By the time they're 35, we're the dominant media. And I said, you're wrong. You're being tricked into thinking these things are what young people want, and I can prove otherwise. And so we did a marketing campaign. We helped them get some non-woke content, massive amounts of views. The president told me explicitly, you're the only person at this company who actually gets the views. The issue is you're too old. I was how old was I at this time? This is 24. This is 10 years ago.
You must have been in your 20s, right?
28, 29. And they said, we are looking at 18-year-olds. And so here, I'll give you another example. Mic.com, M-I-C. Do you know what they started as? Ron Paul.
Really?
It was two libertarian brothers started a Ron Paul libertarian site, and they posted police brutality. Why did they shift their business model? Well, I happen to know this because I actually went to their office headquarters and met with one of their heads of development who said, this gets traffic. We need the views. So when we switch, when we're doing police brutality and we're all libertarian, and she wasn't talking about like the company at the time, but this is their founding. She's like, when we do anti-racist, social justice and feminism, it gets shared on Facebook. When you do conservatism, Facebook was deleting it. We learned this from Gizmodo's reporting in 2016, that employees at Facebook were actively removing this stuff. So you have what I refer to as Jack Dorsey plugging his sewer system into his own mouth. They created these algorithms that promoted social justice. The first content to go viral was police brutality because no one liked police brutality. Then what we ended up seeing was, if you have a video that says racism bad, you get X views. If you have sexism bad, you get Y views. But if you have racism and sexism bad, you get XY. It's exponential. So a company like Mic.com shifted their narrative in line with what was getting them traffic. And the best example of how this works is you look at Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney's early TikTok content, safaris with animals. Why now?
Cute. Yeah.
What happened to Dylan Mulvaney that it turned into day 900 of being a woman?
Because that's what people were responding to.
Chasing after the views, so evolved the content and created this as algorithms pushed it. You then end up with people like Jack Dorsey, who said this is the free speech wing of the free speech party. But after he builds this community on social media promoting only one ideology and downranking anything else like conservatism, because it was offensive to him and his friends, it was offensive to him and his friends because they were gargling on the sewage of their own network.
Okay, so first of all, you brought up Ron Paul, and so it's incumbent on me to say that he is the greatest living American hero. And everybody should go Google him and look him up. And if you're not familiar with him, go read everything he's ever written and listen to everything he's ever said. So that part I will concede. I'm just saying, my argument is not that nobody online has ever put out content that will just get more clicks, or that even like going woke, crazy woke, or crazy anti-woke won't increase views. So what you're talking about was absolutely a part of this transformation. I'm just saying that it's also true that the New York Times and the Washington Post, and by the way, the CIA and the Federal Reserve and the Obama administration, which in this year, in 2012 it was, passed their first big like DEI initiative or whatever, it wasn't just coming from the bottom up. It was also coming from the top down. And that there was this weird convergence there. And my question is just like, why the top down part? And I'm saying that there was also, while there wasn't, listen, you still see it today. Every day since Twitter, like people are monetizing their Twitter under Elon Musk, you see them just kind of post the most provocative thing that's going to get them more clicks. But I'm saying there's something else at work here also, which is that the top down, I believe there was a targeted campaign that Obama had come in and promised a repudiation of the Bush policies. He had failed on them. He had continued all of them, and he pivoted toward this culture war.
But I believe that is hyper-focused on one particular element. The fact that Obama wanted this narrative would imply that powerful Democrats went to their allies and said, focus on this, which does not have the effect of shifting everything overnight. The overnight shift came from algorithms. And the reason why the executives this is an ABC Univision joint venture with $300 million behind it. I worked in the ABC News building alongside all of them. And the president of the company said, we're going after young people. Their marketing people came to them. These meetings are fascinating. One time the marketing guy said, women share more. Women share more than men, and anger generates more shares than anything else. So what do we need? We need to piss off women.
Need angry women. That's what America needs.
100%.
Wow.
Women are more likely to share content on Facebook, and anger is what drives them. What makes women angry? Social justice. So they hyper-focused and prioritized it. This is a $300 million media company with the president and their head of marketing telling me, like, look, man, look at the data. We do a video on trans issues, we get a lot of views. And I'm like, you do a video on any other hot topic issue, you'll get the same amount of views. I got more views talking about Fukushima when the Fallout video came out, when the Fallout video game came out, than you got on all your social justice stuff. Your marketing people are telling you young people are wanting this, but you're eating your own refuse.
That's right.
Look, I went to Vice. Before I left Vice, I told all of these companies the exact same thing. And it's obvious now why Vice completely collapsed in on itself. It's obvious why Fusion collapsed in on itself. They were convinced that the screeching activists who didn't actually care about this stuff were the future. They were convinced that these buzzwords that were appearing on social media represented what young people wanted. And I kept telling them they were wrong. And so what happens now? Both those companies basically don't exist. Vice is a skeleton limping around, struggling to breathe. It can't, it's a skeleton. And Fusion went bankrupt. And I think they went bankrupt. I don't know. They ended up laying everybody off and shutting down. And then what was left was some skin of a website. And then they got rid of that too.
Well, also that whole thing did something really bad for women. I mean, that didn't help women at all, marketing to them that way, because it was the redirection of, a maternal instinct toward a compassion in social justice that has been completely destructive for American women across the board. So
in like 2018, there was a report that came out accusing a bunch of people who are like moderate and conservative and libertarian of being far right. YouTube panicked because they had lost ad revenue and then immediately nuked the recommendations for all of these channels. But it wasn't ideological, it was specific channels. They didn't downrank terms. Immigration was still just fine, but it was specific channels that all of a sudden found they weren't getting recommended anymore, and the analytics dropped off entirely.
Well, okay, but there's another huge element that happened in there, right? So basically, the internet very quickly went from being, forget the algorithm point that you were making, which I do think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. But the internet very quickly went from being kind of the wild, wild west, where people could kind of say whatever they wanted to say, broadly speaking, not completely. There were some people who got banned, but it was very rare. And what happened was, after Donald Trump won the presidency in 2016, there was this mad scramble from the establishment to explain away why he had won. And they landed on a few ridiculous answers. One of them was the insane Hillary Clinton op-ed lies that he was involved in a conspiracy with the Russian government, which then the intelligence agencies jumped on and ran with for years. And then that kind of connected to how Putin had interfered in the election and spread fake news. By the way, this is something a lot of people forget. Fake news was not a term Donald Trump made up.
Right.
This was a term they made up, and then he reappropriated it and turned it around on them. But they were the ones who said, there's fake news, fake news, fake news. And the Congress hauled all of the big tech execs in front of them for the first time ever. Now, this is a regular thing, but this was the first time this has ever happened before in 2016, when they made Jack Dorsey, who was running Twitter at the time, and Mark Zuckerberg, and all these guys come from, and they explicitly threatened all of them if they didn't crack down on fake news, that they were going to regulate these companies and break up these companies and ruin everything they have. The United States of America's federal government forced this kind of censorship regime on big tech platforms. And I'm not claiming that a lot of these big tech platforms didn't agreeably go along with it, but that is where the origin of it was.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.